Hello all, John Adkison here again. I'm doing another interview with Cristian. That's right. For the Circumcision Harms docu-series that I'm working to put together. Cristian, please introduce yourself and tell us how you got involved in this.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cristian Segura. I don't know if it's important to anybody, but I'm 30 years old currently. And I'm also a disabled individual. I was born with cerebral palsy. So there's a whole list of things that come along with that. And I can elaborate that if you want to, John, later. But I pretty much got started with intactivism, or being a general autonomy advocate, as I know that's a term you prefer to use. It's been about 4 years, back in 2017, I'd say. I learned about this issue way back when, 2007, 2008. At that point, hopefully this isn't too much TMI, but I was having a lot of issues with painful erections. Mm-hmm. And of course, at that time, I didn't know why. As far as I knew, everything was fine down there. So I went to a few doctors, a few urologists, and they would always look at me, well, your penis looks fine. We did an inspection. Nothing's wrong. And I say, well, why am I having this pain? That doesn't really seem normal. Oh, just put this cream on it, or just do this or do that. Okay. So then eventually I stopped going to doctors, because I'm like, okay, it's pretty obvious. Nobody knows. And there is something wrong. You shouldn't be having pain. So, I did my own research online. Before that, I would rarely do that because, you figure doctors would know.
Yeah.
Oh, the naivete. So, after looking online, I discovered something called circumcision. What is that? Oh, it's a procedure where they remove what? Why would they do that? And so you start looking at the reasons. Hygiene? Well, that didn't make sense to me. I can wash myself just fine. I may be disabled, but I know how to bathe. My parents taught me how to bathe. What are the other reasons? Oh, prevention of infections. Since when is amputation a valid way to prevent infections?
I know.
You don't amputate. Amputation is always a last resort kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So that made no sense.
It might make sense to people that think that the prepuce has no value, right? And it seems like a lot of people have that belief. And I actually used to think that too.
I see. But my thing was, and I kind of understood this from the beginning, even if it was true that the prepuce had no value, who is to tell you that you have to remove it?
Yeah.
If it has no value, and losing it has no value, and supposedly retaining it because it's extra skin, why would you choose to cut it off instead of just leave it alone?
Yeah.
It just makes no sense. So either way, none of this makes sense.
Yeah.
And then of course you look at the religious reasons. I was raised Catholic and was inducted and all that. Thankfully, I knew enough to question things which my family didn't like, but I'm not Catholic right now. I would say I'm either atheist or not currently following any religion, whatever works for you. So the religious reason never made sense to me. And so at that time, I didn't really go too deep into it. I just went on a kind of like a surface level. I knew. And then that's when I found out, oh, so that's a scar I have there. I didn't even know that was a scar. To me, everybody had that, Mm-hmm. So then I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. Painful erections, there's not enough tissue there to accommodate a normal erection. So that's why it hurts. Okay. Yeah. And then as the years went on, things kind of started getting worse. I started losing more and more sensitivity. And when I tell you you lose a lot of sensitivity. Like, I'm 30 right now. Let me tell you, again, probably too much TMI. I essentially feel almost nothing anymore. The only thing I feel, I have a small piece of the frenulum that I guess either they forgot to remove, or whoever did the procedure decided to give me some kind of undisclosed mercy. I don't know. And so they left that tiny piece, and that tiny piece behind the head of the penis is the only spot where I feel anything significant. And if you look at it, it's actually being stretched unnaturally. It's like it's not in a relaxed state. Yeah. So it also hurts to the touch. So please tell me how that state is not. It's not your fault. It's what was done. So I understood that. How is this possibly? How can you look at me and say that this is fine to do? Oh, you turned out that way. Oopsie. No,
that's not okay.
That just makes no sense. That's not okay. So then eventually, going to 2017, there was just one day where I was bathing and, I was washing myself, and I guess I touched it incorrectly, and there was so much pain. I don't know what happened. Either it was very sensitive because I was washing it. And at that point, something just snapped at me. I'm like, why the hell did they do this to me? What? Who thought this was a good idea? And so, like a dummy, because I know I'm looking back on it, I shouldn't have done it at the time. I confronted my parents then and there. And I got out of the shower and I called them down and I asked them, did you know? Why did you do this to me? And of course, they were taken aback and they look at me like, well, we did it to everybody. What's your problem? Why nobody else is complaining? And I'm like, does it matter that nobody else is complaining?
Yeah.
Like,
the method that your father probably went through is probably different than what you went through. And based on what you're telling me, I'm betting that you were probably put through a Bell method.
Well, but here's the thing. Here's the kicker. Here's what makes everything worse. My father is intact.
Oh gosh, I think
my father is an intact man. Yes, sir. He was not. My parents are Hispanic. They're from the Dominican Republic. They circumcise over there, but their rate is much lower than here. They still do it. But I'm assuming that because my father wasn't cut, he has 2 other brothers. They weren't cut either. I'm assuming. So my thing is like, as an intact man, how do you volunteer your child for something? They say, oh, we're going to cut a part of his penis off. How does that not immediately make you recoil? You're going to do what to my child? Absolutely not. To me, that's the default reaction.
Yeah, the trust in doctors, medical professionals is just, it's right up there. It's high.
It's absolutely. But my thing is, and I say this like it makes a difference, but both of my parents are college educated people. My dad has a master's degree in engineering. Mm-hmm. My mother has a bachelor's degree in statistics. They're not dumb people, but they still were taken up, were taken in. So according to them, the story went, after I managed to calm down enough to listen to their side of the story, they said, oh, the doctor offered it, but we weren't sure. So we went to get a second opinion. That second opinion was an uncle of mine who is a physician. Mm-hmm. And of course he said, go for it. So that was that. And to me, that just, I'm like, that's still not acceptable. I don't know how you guys were raised, and obviously they had their own issues with their own families, because the Dominican Republic is a deeply, deeply religious nation. Religion, and I'm just gonna put it out there. People can be as religious as they want. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the second that your religion crosses over onto somebody else's body, that's a no. That's a big no.
Absolutely.
Okay. Everybody has the right to their own religious freedom. That includes your children. And you cannot use your religion to justify doing anything like that. So what I was saying, religion thrives in places with low economic disparity, which the Dominican Republic very much is. There are still people there living in villages. I'm sure you can imagine what that's like. So you have people preaching religion all day, running down in cars, yelling out, you may be poor, but God will save you, and stuff like that. So you can already imagine, even at all hours of the night, you could be sleeping, you'll hear that crap. So it's, my mother was raised religious. My dad was also raised religious. I don't know how much of that he internalized. He certainly doesn't seem to display it now. So I know it wasn't because of any kind of religious reason, but that doesn't really matter. That the person who has had this done has no recourse.
I hear you. Absolutely. Same here.
So my thing is like, I don't care whether it was religious reasons or anything else. You had no reason to do that to me. And I told them, my mother apologized. To me, it was kind of half-hearted, but I straight up told her, okay, you apologize. Not only do I not have to accept it, but it really does nothing for me. Okay. Oopsie. And what now?
Yeah.
So, I know people say, your child may forgive you. I'm telling you right now, I do not. I can't.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah, it is. We're talking about, a very important body part. I'd rather give up both my earlobes, honestly.
Agreed.
They're less valuable than the prep use, as you learn about how it works and all that.
The irony of that is my mother often tells a story about when I was younger. Supposedly, in the kindergarten, I had a teacher that, well, I don't know how you can put it without being politically correct, but he was gay, supposedly. Mm-hmm. And one day I came to her supposedly saying that I wanted to get an earring just like him, and she did not like that. So, okay, so you won't let me pierce an earlobe, but you'll remove half the skin on my penis.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make sense when you start really looking at it.
No sense. None of this makes sense. You can come at it from any angle you want. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I don't know if you know my story, but I came real close to being a great parent myself, right?
Right.
So, I try to understand how powerful, social pressures and medical professionals and cultural norms and everything can be, and that it's just like you were talking about, it's like you didn't know yourself, and you didn't get the connection to what was going on with your penis down there until you started doing the research and thinking about it and all that. And I didn't know either. And that's the thing. It's okay when someone says, well, no one else is complaining. It's like, how many of those guys that aren't complaining even have considered it, they have even thought about it, because they were born practically without that part. They have
and I made that point, and it was kind of like talking to a wall. They just shared extra because they have no answer for it. So it's like, okay, you're still not helping your own case, but whatever.
And you mentioned Catholicism, right? And you do know that Catholicism is against the practice.
Right. I'm aware it was in the Old Testament, but now in the New Testament, it has been denounced.
And I mean, even popes have denounced it. And people can go to Catholics Against Circumcision.org to see some of these papers and quotes from actual popes and stuff like that.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being brave enough to come out about this. I know it's not easy. It was not easy for me. I went for a good time before I decided, enough is enough. I know that this might upset my own family members. I might lose some friends over it. I might even have an impact on my career and other financial dealings by speaking out about this, but it's too important to me.
It's very important. It needs to end.
Yeah, yesterday. And even after I made that decision, I continued to learn more and more and more, and I learned more about how it's all intertwined with other genital cutting practices that aren't just male.
Right, of course.
So.
I do not like any of it. Everybody should be protected. Male, female, intersex. It's not your body. It's a very simple concept. Very simple concept.
If they can pee, let it be.
That's it. If you can pee, let it be. If intact, don't retract. It couldn't be simpler than that, honestly.
Yeah, and that's very important. Do not retract, because I think a lot of preputial amputations or circumcisions end up occurring because of forced retraction, because this has been going on for so long that we've completely forgotten how the intact penis works and how to treat it and care for it properly.
Right. Adding on to that, supposedly my mother never even knew my father was intact. So I told her, I'm like, didn't you know you had, before you made me, you had sex with an intact man? I had no idea. How did you have no idea? Like, that makes no sense to me.
The guy Jean-Luc Picard on Star Trek. I'm forgetting his real name right now.
Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart, yes. He actually talked about this on a talk show. He didn't know himself. He was an older guy, and he thought that he was circumcised, but he went to the doctor and turned out, oh, he's intact. And he was a Jewish doctor too.
Imagine. I guess I can understand it if you've never heard of the practice, but I would think, if I was a parent, I'm not a parent, but if I was a parent, somebody tells me, oh, we're just gonna cut part of it, you're gonna do no, like immediate. That's just my immediate reaction. Like, immediately. Even as a 17-year-old back in 2007, I heard about it, and I didn't try to rationalize it. I said, well, that's wrong. Immediately, I said, that's wrong.
You realize that the medical professionals don't even present it that way. They don't say, oh, we're going to amputate, or we're going to cut off, or we're going to cut. They don't even say anything about knives or anything, right? Or clamps or any of this stuff. They say circumcised, yes or no.
Circumcision. Yeah,
That's all.
circumcision.
And it's so stuck in our heads, particularly from religion, that this is a good thing. This is, what God wants, et cetera, et cetera. And everyone's doing it and no one's complaining. So why would I question
Yeah,
it? Oh,
that
well,
was
what do
the
you even
first.
think to question it?
Right, that was the first reason mom gave me. Well, everybody did it at the time, and I find that kind of funny because she raised us, giving us the old adage: if everybody was jumping off a bridge, would you go ahead and do it too? Okay, so you tell us that, but you go, oh, everybody was doing it. Okay, so if everybody's cutting penises, would you go ahead and do it too? Oops, you did.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's very hypocritical. So
Yeah.
I told her, I'm like, this is why I don't think I can ever take you seriously again.
Yeah.
And even these days, she'll tell me something and I'll give her the side eye and she knows what it means. So I'm like, you raised us a certain way, but then you didn't even follow your own teachings.
Yeah. And there's kids books like my favorite one that I refer to about this one is The Fox Who Lost His Tail. Right. And there's also a Dr. Seuss one where like a couple of these, beings have these stars on their chest and then everyone else wants a star on their chest and all that. Right.
I think I remember that one. As a little kid.
And it's like, well, read those and then apply circumcision to those. And then it starts making sense. It's like, that's what, that's where our society is about this topic. So,
yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you also for watching my other videos. I'm really happy that encouraged you to interview with me.
Of course, you do great work, and I'm glad to see that because the more people, the better.
Yeah. And so you already know how there's some things. I've got like an outline where we cover specific items and all that. And as I go through that, as you think of things that apply to you or whatever experiences that you had or whatever, chime in between each. So because the whole idea is I'm going to capture these bits and put them into the series, and basically each topic that I cover will be one series.
Perfect.
As I intended. So the highlights are the physical aspects of how male preputial amputations affect men. And then how it affects partnerships, sexual partnerships. Then the psychological effects of all of this. Then there's the relationships, there's non-sexual relationships and how all that gets affected by genital cutting rituals in general, period. Then we'll talk a little bit about FGM and IGM and a little bit about how it's all intertwined and all that. Then social productivity is the last item, and the second last item. And then again, we'll revisit the forced retraction.
Sounds good.
I don't know, we'd have a lot more to say about it, but anyways. So I imagine you already know what the acropostion means at this point.
Yes, that is the part of the prepuce that goes beyond the glands. Yes.
Yeah, that hangs past, and when you look at an infant baby, that's like really closed up tight, and it's like a one-way valve. It allows stuff to go, fluid to go out, but nothing to get in. And I don't, biblical or whatever, I don't think 2,000 years, 4,000 years, 10,000 years ago, they were thinking about cutting just that part off in order to improve hygiene. In fact, I think it does the absolute opposite. It makes things dirtier because it doesn't. Then you don't have that part that stays closed to allow stuff out, but not stuff in.
Exactly. Even if you just look at it, it honestly makes sense as to why it's there. At least to me. The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. It stays closed so nothing else can get in.
Yep. So
and you know that when you urinate, the body will open to let urine out. It's very it's not rocket science here.
Yeah, we're not wanting people to be pedophiles here, but you should look at it from a clinical perspective, an objective perspective, and look at how you can look at a real, there's drawings too of baby penis, but really if you look at the real thing and really take the time to think about what I'm telling you, it makes complete sense.
Makes complete sense.
And that's what used to be removed up until like 133 AD or something like that, when the rabbis decided, well, we need to cut off more because, Jewish men are trying to cover their glands out of, respect for everyone else. They don't want to expose, right? So
just evil all around.
yeah, and we want Jews to stick out and be different and separate from everyone else. Whether they're trying to be superior or whatever, I don't know, but
well, they picked the worst way to go about it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Honestly.
Yeah, stick a star on my forehead or something like that instead, please.
Exactly. You don't need to mutilate anybody.
I would have chosen that before getting part of my penis cut off.
Jesus.
Yeah. And so we know that's now they're what do they actually say in the Jewish text? It says lay bare the glands, and the glands GLANS, not there's no D in it. That's the top part of the top part of the previously amputated penis. That's the darker helmet style fireman's helmet looking part of the penis. And so that completely lays it bare and open, and so that means that they removed all that tissue that was covering it, and since it's a double fold of tissue, it adds up to be a lot of tissue. So when if I hold my thumb here and I pull this down, or my finger here, and so that's like that much tissue, right?
It's a lot of tissue,
yeah, and people look at it when it's a little baby. Oh, it's just a little bit of tissue. It's a little bit, just a little bit of skin. What are you getting all upset about? A little bit of skin. Like, well,
everything on a baby is little. That grows with you.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a double fold of skin, so you have to unfold it to really look at how much you're talking about.
Exactly.
And muscle. It's my wife has to correct me here. There's it's that muscle that keeps it closed at the end. It's the fascia, the dartos fascia. So I don't know why this was important, but I guess they needed a study in order to prove to medical professionals that, hey, this is you're actually removing something that's sensitive, right? So they did the Sorrells study and identify that's some of the most sensitive to light touch part of the penis. And I'd love to pick on Brian Morris about this because he said something about it's touch, it doesn't matter or something like that.
He's
what? Are you serious?
He's an absolute joke. Oh, an absolute joke. I can't believe anybody still takes him seriously.
Yeah. I mean that right there should just discount anything that he's wrote. And there's tons of papers that he's done where he references his own other papers to try to blow this thing out of proportion.
If it were any other topic, that would have his credibility would have been gone. But of course, since it's so culturally protected, people just kind of ignore it.
Yeah. I think if we continue to get more and more men to complain and speak out about this, maybe it'll get there. But
I sure hope so. The problem is, actually getting them to recognize what was done. That's the hard part.
Yeah. So, and this kind of goes on the next thing, but it's like calling a skin is like calling your cheeks skin, or your lips just skin, or your eyelids just skin. It's so much more.
It's erogenous tissue. It's not just skin.
Yeah, and it's
erogenous tissue.
And it's mucosal, like the inside.
And it's mucosal, right? It's supposed to be lubricated and internal.
Yeah. You really look at any other mammal. If you wanted to look at a mammal, with an erect penis, I mean, you see the dogs with it all the time. When they come out, it's shiny and smooth.
We think we're above all that somehow. That doesn't apply to us at all.
Yeah,
even though we're mammals ourselves.
Yeah.
So it's just a big flaw, a big error in thinking.
So all mammals have foreskin or prepuce, and it's protecting the inner part, and it's same for males too. It's supposed to be there.
Right.
And because it's a double folded tissue and it unfolds as it rolls down, that's a rolling mechanism, right? So, of course, this depends on the guy, but there's, even when a guy is erect, there might still be the tissue up there to allow for the unrolling to occur. And that allows intercourse without
Right.
having to have a lot of friction, especially at the very beginning.
Mhm.
So, and every guy knows when you move the shaft skin, it's like the skin isn't attached to the underlying muscle. It
Bless you.
glides. He says, "Bless you, Jennifer." But yeah, you're supposed to have a lot more gliding, and a man can just when he's erect to see how much mobility he has, and it's like my mobility is like just a little bit.
Right. I
I
have a little more, but still, it's not enough to do anything major.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why us Americans need lotion or whatever, and it's
See, I can't even use that because if I, well, in my case, if I use lube, it gets so oversensitive that it literally starts hurting. So I just have to go without. If
some of the lubes are designed to create heat, and supposedly that's supposed to be valuable in one way or another. I'm not sure how or why, but
I see. Well, I haven't tried many, so I'm actually not sexually active myself yet. Okay. So I just have very limited experience. But I know I tried one lubrication. It was silicone based. Supposedly, some people tell me water based is better. Mm-hmm. But it was just so uncomfortable. I couldn't. I said no, I can't use it. I have to just go dry.
Yeah, water based is supposedly better, but you have to use more of it more often because it dries up.
Right. I'm sure they love to have our money.
Yep. Another reason to pay people to keep this circumcision machine going, right?
Yeah. And another thing that annoys me, you see services like Blue Chew and stuff like, oh, help for erectile dysfunction. I'm like, we wouldn't need help if you hadn't cut us up at birth.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
There's one company I'm going to give them a shout out here, even though they're not paying me. Maybe I'll ask them to sponsor things in the future. But Adam and Eve is a company that sells tools and toys and stuff like that, and they help pay for sexplanations, and I think they also paid for Caitlin V. They're both YouTubers that talk about sex stuff, and both of those people have spoken out against male genital cutting.
Cool. I hadn't heard of them.
Yeah, so I for a company that is actually making money from lube products to actually support individuals that speak against male circumcision, that's great.
Right. Definitely unexpected in this culture.
Yeah. Okay, and then so we already talked about the moisture and lube and the rolling mechanism, and then there's the frenulum, and this doesn't do it justice because they're just like little lines here. Yep. Right? Because really the frenulum goes down from here and it kind of stretches out to the ridge band and grabs a hold of the middle of the foreskin.
Yeah, that little piece you indicated, that's all I have left. That tiny little bit.
Yeah, and I really should fashion something that looks kind of like a Bell method, but when they use that Bell method, it just covers up the glands, and it's designed to protect the glands from getting harmed, because that's what the Mogen Clamp was doing, right? And they got sued. The Mogen Clamp company got sued because of it.
So evil.
Yeah,
I can't believe a device like that. You look at the device, it looks like a torture device.
Yeah.
It looks like a torture device. How could anybody? Oh, you're gonna clamp? Yeah. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I called the FBI and try to tell them, hey, we're torturing babies here. But they were like, call your medical board. It's like, yeah, already did.
Yeah. You want us to call the perpetrators? Good idea.
Yeah. Like, come on, you guys. You're supposed to be the FBI. Go investigate this. Anyways, so yeah, so with the Bell methods, that bell goes down here, and then they cut down just here, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas with the Mogen Clamp and the barzel and stuff like that, and you can watch like the Xhosa tribe, you can find some videos where they pull the skin up about as much as they can, and then they cut out here. Right?
Yeah, I've seen pictures. I don't think I have the stomach to watch an actual video.
So that leaves your inner mucosa and your frenular area behind. But they might do some sort of snip in order to keep the frenum from continuing to pull what you have left up. Right. So snipping it this way is not the same as carving it out this way.
And carving it out, right?
So that might be another reason why certain men aren't complaining, especially guys like me, that I'm pretty sure I got cut with a Mogen clamp, because I still have the inner mucosa and my frenular area, which is all very, very sensitive. And I never even put 2 and 2 together before I started studying this. Like, oh, and looking at the Sorrells study, it's like, so that's a sense of, let me pay attention to that. And when I have sex, like, oh yeah, how about that? That is. And lucky me, I still have at least some of that. I'm just got really tight, so I have other issues. It took me a lot of years to look at all this, to put all this together. And it's like, so I'm trying to, guys could go out to circumcisionharm.org and learn all this pretty quick and fast, but it's the website doesn't exactly explain it all like I'm trying to explain it in a way that it might click in you guys' heads faster.
There's still a huge educational gap. I know these days, even today, they don't discuss those specialized parts of the penis in any kind of health textbook or anything like that. I remember my health textbooks from high school and college, no mention of the prepuce, no mention of the dartos fascia, no mention of the frenulum, no mention of the inner foreskin, no mention of the rigid band, nothing. You see a diagram, they point to the glands, they say penis. That's it. Yeah. That's all you see.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you'll see, oh, that's a foreskin. And that's why they get, it sometimes gets cut off. That's all.
See, mine didn't even mention that. So they really go out of their way to hide this stuff. It's crazy.
I just yesterday or the day before yesterday, I attended we moved recently, so this is the second time I've gotten to do this. Attended a parent conference thing with the school district about the sex ed class that they're gonna have, and they've been trying to change things to improve sex ed. So in fact, they're mandating some sex ed and all that on kids, but they're trying to be careful about certain things, like applying values and trying to avoid the religious aspect of it and all that. It's like well, it's just like world history. You can't teach world history without talking about the religion.
Exactly.
because the religion is what caused so much of what happened.
Exactly.
And you can't really talk about sex ed too much without touching on it. And they use the word circumcision, and it's like, well, that word comes from a religious
practices. Exactly.
You should be using something that is more neutral and more technical and more sciencey and all that, like preputial amputation or preputial preputioplasty or something like that.
Honestly, it would please me great if we could just call it what it was, genital mutilation, because this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
I know it's a loaded term and everything.
Yeah. So I'm trying to stay out of the terms that use the affect psychology, right?
Right.
So
I
there's
know
a psychological view that is genital mutilation. So a lot of guys aren't going to want to think of themselves as genital mutilated. In fact,
I know.
A lot of females
will
don't want to be seen that way either. But the circumcision is good, right? Because it's in the Bible or whatever. So okay, let's go to the middle term that is not charged,
right,
psychologically. So and most people aren't going to deny or argue with that. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's what's going on. Even the term, it's hard enough to use the term amputate. It's like you're using that to push my buttons. It's like, no, that's what is literally going on.
It's literally what's happening.
You're amputating part of the body. That's I don't mean to use that word to push your buttons. That's just what's going on.
But it is a reality.
Yeah,
it's a reality.
Yeah. So Okay, and then the last part that is removed, and was even removed when they were just doing the acroplastion, is the ridged band. And what I've heard from intact men is that, and like Michael Winnell from Foreskin Revolution down in Australia will tell you this. He's actually got some videos on YouTube about it. But anyways, because it's like closed up, it squeezes up at the end of the penis, and then when it comes down during an erection, right, it's sliding down and it's unrolling. That unrolling and that that's spreading out, that the gland is causing it to do, is an erotic sensation in itself.
Right, it's pleasurable.
It's what?
It's pleasurable in itself.
Yeah. You don't even have to be having intercourse to enjoy that sensation. So yeah. Okay, so missing all these parts, it's not just one part, it's not just foreskin, not even just the prepuce, it's that's actually several parts, tiny parts in there, but it's still parts.
Everything contributes to the whole.
Yeah, and there's like glands in it that cause the lubrication, stuff like that too. I mean, we can go into lots of detail if we want to, but it leads to lots of problems. All right, starting off with hairy shaft, or what a medical professional would often call scrotal webbing.
Mm-hmm.
Because since you don't have that skin to unroll and slide down onto the shaft, you're pulling up on the scrotum instead during an erection, right? Mm-hmm. And you're also, and so scrotums are typically hairy, especially if you're a hairy guy like me. Yeah, lots of hair.
Right.
And I don't think people really want hairy shaft. You can shave it or wax it or whatever. That's not very comfortable. Waxing or even removing hairs on your scrotum, but
absolutely not.
But then it can come back stubby and all that, and that can cause problems for the vagina. So no fun either way. And because it's pulling up on the scrotum, it's pulling up. The testes are inside the scrotum, right? So those are being drawn up and pushed up against the body. And in my case, one would even pop inside of my body.
Oh my goodness!
I'd have to stop. Oh, you didn't see that video yet?
No, I didn't see that one. But it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same. If you look at how the genitalia is developed, your gonads are up inside of your body, in utero, and then they, for males,
then they drop.
Right,
they drop,
right? And they go out of this cavern. But they get, they can come back up and pop back inside that cavern if things are, made tight enough to do so.
To make it right.
Yeah. And even just pulling them up, it's like it can kind of create a squeezing sensation on them.
Yeah, I can imagine it's very uncomfortable.
Just squeeze your testes just a little bit, not too hard, but just a little bit. See how comfortable that is.
It's very painful. Very painful.
Yeah. So, and I keep hoping that the intact men will watch these videos and come to understand how lucky they are. They are lucky stiffs, guys.
Absolutely. I know why they, some of them say, well, I felt bad because I was made fun of. Honestly, if somebody's making fun of you, you need to get better friends. Yeah. Yeah. Especially as someone who was able to stay natural, I would never be ashamed of that, ever. Or men that say, well, women, women don't like it. That's not up to them. Your body is your own.
Yeah. And I keep saying, most women that I come across that don't like it are women that have been culturally conditioned. They've been used to seeing one type. So it's, seeing something else is like seeing an alien for the first time.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, that still doesn't excuse it. Okay. Well, how would you, if how would you as a woman like it? If, your labia are too long. I don't like them. Yeah. Cut them. Yeah. No, nobody would. They would look at you like you grew two heads.
Yeah, and women do that, and it's growing. That's actually a growing procedure. And Jessica Penn, I keep giving her a shout out, even though she didn't like me.
That's another one.
Yeah, she got got some labia trimmed, but she had far much more cut than
I
she
know,
wanted to.
you know.
But yeah,
you know, of course, I don't condone that happening. I feel very bad that happened to her.
Yeah.
But then you would think that would help her understand even more what we're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, maybe she'll come around, but you know, that's okay. You know, I'm happy that she's, you know, beating heads, you know, in the medical professional and getting a medical degree and stuff like that, and getting things fixed. So that's great. Hopefully that'll also lead to even more research to make the medical backs about genitalia even better for males too.
Let's hope so. But you know, as long as money is involved, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big motivator here, because even when the UK abolished it, the main reason why the rates went down so quickly was because doctors could no longer make money off of it, so they saw it as unnecessary. Yeah. As long as we keep that profit motive here, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, and not just the profit motive for the butchers, but for Viagra and lubes and...
Absolutely. It's all connected. If you take a step back and just look at everything, you'll be amazed. You'll be like, oh, so this happens. That's why you have to get this, which in turn causes this, and then that causes that. It's all a puzzle that comes together.
Yeah, and then the cosmetics industry too. You know,
they're the worst.
You know, I was saying lucky stiffs, you know, to the intact men, just like there is actually a luckystiff.org website if anyone's curious.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, just another site for information about this issue and all that. So
yeah, I mean, you would think we have a law that prevents, you know, actually the organ theft, but I guess that doesn't apply when it comes to boys, huh?
Well, maybe, you know, unless the FBI decides to actually investigate, and then maybe they'll go arrest someone. I don't know. Maybe it'll be Oprah.
I'm not holding my breath here, but that's the first one that needs to go.
Or Sandra Bullock.
That's another one.
Yeah.
You know, it's terrible. You know, they rail against FGM and they just have no concept of, guys, you know, don't cut up girls, don't cut up boys either. Protect everybody.
Yeah.
Like I said, not a hard concept.
And then so that's the bottom part of the penis, right? Getting drawn up, but there's also the top part, and I have this issue quite seriously. And I've seen some pictures like guys that, you know, they're cut so tight that when they get an erection, the hairy part of, you know, their stomach comes down and onto their shaft as well.
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah, but you know, mine is so tight, and my skin going there isn't loose enough. So what happens is, you know, my penis kind of cranes, kind of upward, like a...
Got you. Right.
Like a fishing rod, or like a, you know, like the thing on the back of a tow truck. You know, the cables are pulling it up, so it's like the skin is pulling it up, and that causes the bottom of it to, you know, stretch out, and then, you know, the top to kink a little bit. You know, all you have to do is like take one of those balloons that you blow up to make, you know, animals or flowers or whatever with, and just blow it up and then bend it. It doesn't take much for it to like start to kink. And you know, the corpus cavernosum, the part that fills with blood inside, is a lot like that balloon. And it doesn't take much research to find, you know, you can see penises get broken, right? They don't have bones in them, but the corpus cavernosa inside will break if it's, you know, if it's twisted and bent too much.
Yeah, and it's a muscle. You can sprain a muscle. It's the same thing, you know. As speaking of blood, I see people or hear people all the time. Oh, you know, the foreskin. There's no nerves in there. That's one. Oh, there's no there's nothing to that area. Babies don't feel anything in that area. There's a whole artery running through the penis, a dorsal artery, and you're removing a significant part of that. Yeah. You know, just putting all the sexual stuff aside, removing a part of an artery is not a good thing. What happens when blood flow is obstructed? Nothing good, ever. So even putting aside the sexual parts and the parts you're losing, you're cutting into a major artery. Yeah. That alone should have people go, no, you're not doing this.
Yeah.
No. But that I know that part doesn't get explained either.
Yeah.
But considering how the organ works, it's filling with blood. You kind of have to think a little bit. What causes it to fill with blood? What is blood vessels, veins? Mm-hmm. Why would you want to remove any of that? How do you think that removing any of that would benefit you in any way? That makes no sense.
Oh, hygiene.
Yeah, because we don't have soap and water.
Yeah, you don't even need soap, really. I mean,
you don't even need. You're right. You don't even need soap.
You don't. Females know this quite well. You don't go sticking soap inside of your vagina, because that can, lead to infections.
Right, so, and it dries stuff out.
Yeah, it messes with the pH balance and all that. So,
right.
Yeah. Myelostenosis is one of the things that happens.
I have that. I have that quite severely.
Do you? Oh man.
Yeah, it's a very small opening.
Yeah. Mine, when I have a quite vivid memory of this. I don't remember exactly how old I was. I was probably 7 or 8 years old, but I had a little skin tag that jumped across the, and I would, I'd pee, it would kind of like spray all over.
It would spray out. Right.
Yeah,
it would spray.
Instead of having a single stream, it was like 2 streams that would like spread out. So,
but that's not a problem, apparently.
It only, it happens to a lot of boys, and yeah. Okay, skin bridges. Tell me if you've had any of this, but what happens is after getting cut and going home and all that, and the penis relaxes, and whatever skin is available is going to slide back up and touch the glands. Right. And because the glands and the inner mucosa are normally adhered during infancy, the body tries to heal that by creating scar tissue.
It's almost like the body knows how it's supposed to be. I don't know. Got to think about it. I know I'm all the sarcasm, but it's just, you look at this issue and you're just like, what?
Yeah,
it literally boggles the mind, because we're literally ignoring male biology.
Yeah,
it's based about, this has been known for hundreds of years at this point. Yeah. And we still ignore it in favor of profit.
Yeah, I don't know how. Well, maybe it's just that the OBs and the pediatricians do the cutting, and then the urologists do the fixing. That the OBs and the pediatricians don't see the damage that they're doing. And there's also no follow up. I mean, it's like, I'm pretty sure the guy that cut me is probably gone by now. He's right. So,
I thought about that too. Sometimes. Like, I wonder if he's dead already.
Yeah, look him up.
Probably. Who knows?
Him or her. I don't know. More and more female doctors are doing it these days. So
very true.
So it creates a connection there. The caretaker is supposed to be putting Vaseline or whatever on there to keep any of this happening. The nurses or whatever teach the caretaker, the mother, whoever, to do this. I actually have a very vivid memory of my little brother having that put on him.
Oh, good. Goodness gracious.
So I didn't understand why, but yeah. So, and then gets older and pulls us down, and there's a skin that jumps from here to here, and we got to clean that out with like a Q-tip or something like that. So, and that happens more often than people probably want to acknowledge.
Yeah, call instead of prevention, you're just causing more issues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you probably have more chances of having issues being cut than you do not being cut.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the very fact of not having a foreskin is in itself an issue. I mean, not having one is a birth defect, apostasy, I'm sure you know. Mm-hmm. So you're paying these butchers to induce a birth defect on your son permanently.
Yeah.
Like, you see, no matter how you spin it, it's just like it gets worse.
Yeah.
This is a rabbit hole. The more you know, the worse it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just keeps going deeper and deeper.
It never ends.
Yeah. I keep thinking, okay, I'm going to get to the end of this, and I don't. Just keep finding out more. Okay, erectile dysfunction. This could be debated as to whether this is, the cause of erectile dysfunction. But I'll tell you this, as far as I'm concerned, it comes from one of two things, or both. One is, a physical aspect, something physical is missing there that's not working like it's supposed to, right? So therefore, you're less likely to get erection. But when you're like you and I, that we've realized, what we're missing, it's kind of hard to put that out of your mind when you're being sexual.
It's not kind of hard; it's impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, assuming you actually recognize it, I'm sure that if you want to deny, maybe it's a little easier for some people, but not for me.
Yeah.
And of course, that does also affect your capability of maintaining an erection. But of course, this has a major effects on maintaining an erection as well, because again, like I said, you're cutting off veins, nerve endings. You're cutting a part of the dorsal artery. All of that supplies blood. You need blood to maintain an erection. So if you have an interruption in that, makes sense. It's not going to be as you're not going to have the best time. Let's put it that way.
I'll give a little tip out to guys for what I do is I try to pay attention to my partner and their enjoyment mostly, and and having them enjoy things excites me. So that does it for the most part with me. Not to say that I haven't had bouts of issues, but yeah. And then there's premature ejaculation, and I added this more recently because it's like it kind of all of a sudden it just dawned on me. Another thing that just dawned on me is like, wait a second, Mother Nature was thinking. Mother Nature knows what she's doing, Dan. So if again you look at the Sorrells study and look what's most sensitive, well, that's that prenular area is. Well, wait a second, that prenular area is down in there, and it's protected by the male prepuce, and it doesn't touch anything other than itself in here until
whoop, there you go.
No, it's getting rubbed.
Stimulation.
Now we get ejaculation after it's inside the vagina.
Exactly.
To where it's supposed to be ejaculating, not here.
Exactly. And it's what was I gonna say? It's and people say, oh, well, I can't imagine being more sensitive. If I was more sensitive, I'd ejaculate even faster. No, it gives you more control. You're not just more sensitive, you have more control over when you ejaculate, but they can't imagine it because they've never put two and two together.
They never.
It's not just about being, you'd be more sensitive, but you also have more control. So you can better choose when you want the big finish. But of course, they only see it in terms of, oh, what feels good. Okay, that doesn't, Yeah.
Plus, both partners can have sex more often, quicker. They can
recover
faster, right? Because since they're not doing all this friction and rubbing each other raw, and you're having this mobile, thing going on, you can have more orgasms more often. Yay!
Well, and I know that sometimes painful. I have this issue where you have an orgasm and it just starts hurting because there are, the prepuce has nerves that would inhibit that pain from the glands. But of course, when you generally cut, you remove those.
Yeah.
So of course you get this. I don't know how to describe it, like a recoil in the glands. You get this pain. Yeah. And after that, I have to wait at least a day before doing anything else because the pain just stays there.
Yeah, I want to compare it to something, but it's kind of like think of like rubbing a cat's hair backwards. Cats don't like it, right?
Right.
So the glands, when it's covered all the time, it's smooth. And you can look at pictures to see how, close-up pictures to see how totally smooth it is on an intact guy.
It's not only smooth, but it has a healthy color, like a pinkish, reddish color.
Too. And then you look at a guy that's been, it's been rubbing against clothing all of his life, 30, 40, 50 years or whatever, and it's rougher. And so I can't imagine that that's going to feel the same when the gland's getting rubbed.
It does not. Yeah. It does not.
It just can't. The only person that I still want to get Nikos Koustaris. He appeared on the American Circumcision documentary, and he said that he'd interview with me, but we haven't nailed down a time yet. He was cut older, at 18, so, but he quickly restored afterwards. So I'd love to go into some of the details about this with him, but I don't know if he probably wasn't uncovered long enough for his glands to dry up, keratinize, and
right.
So maybe so really, I don't think there's a man or men out there that can really, well, maybe restored men could talk a little bit more about that. But I've had some restored men that I've talked to, and they say, yeah, the glands is so different. Stuff sloughs off, and it gets smoother and feels so much better, and all that. So maybe that's sufficient.
Yeah, I myself, I do want to try to restore because I'm already 30. I'm not going to get any younger. So, so I figure I might as well do it. It's just the whole mental aspect to me. You're going to put in all this work to restore, and in the end, you're still not going to get everything back. That's very difficult.
Yeah, it's time consuming. It's frustrating, and every time you do it, you're refreshing your memory that that this has happened to you.
Yeah, but I think I have to reframe it in my head because I do want to, I'd rather have something back than nothing. I mean, it really can't get any worse for me. So,
I've heard of some men they try to bury themselves in work and stuff like that so they can forget about what's going on down there.
To me, that's even worse. I don't want to be working either. I work in the public sector, so if I'm not at home worrying about this, I'm in the office having people yell at me because I didn't do what they wanted, So it's like, what's better? I'll take being at home, thank you.
I hear you.
So I've been able to work from home because of COVID, but still, it's the same concept.
I'm a corporate IT guy, so I've done plenty of tech support stuff, so I know.
So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. That's a whole other talk to talk about.
Right.
Anyways, and then the last item I have on the physical aspects of this is general botches. Again, the glands can get partly amputated. David Reamer got his whole penis burnt off.
Yeah, I heard the story. It was very sad. Very sad.
And if they don't cut it, a perfect 90-degree angle perfectly, you might have too little skin on one side or the other, so you end up having a little bit of a curved penis, especially when you get erection.
It's all these things, obviously they don't inform the parents, and parents think, well, my child won't be a statistic. You won't know that. You won't know that until it's done. You don't consider, hey, your child could be one of the, over 100 that die. That won't happen. And then even if, your child does grow up, they're not going to share their issues with you. Not those kind of issues. Very few, children, men that grow up would willingly go to their parents and say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Yeah. So it's not, you're never going to know.
I wasn't going to talk to my parents about it, but my brother he got his wife pregnant, and I wanted to protect my nephew, so that's when I told them what happened to me and how it affected me and all that. So
did it help?
Help who? Me or them?
No, them.
My mother was apologetic. My dad was a little bit defensive about it at first, but, which is to be expected, being that he's also cut. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I can't relate. My dad didn't apologize either, which I still look at him and go, "Are you kidding me?" So then I remember telling him, "I'm hoping Foraging can do something, that something comes along before I at least turn 50." But and I told them, there's this procedure people are researching that could possibly, help me regain that function. So I told him, because you did this to me, you should pay for it. And he just laughed. He said, I'm not going to pay for it. I'm like, okay, don't worry.
Yeah.
So he, it's like, okay, so you damaged me, but you don't want to fix it.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to know what happens in the future about this. So.
Yeah. Hopefully, I know funding is difficult to get because people don't see this as an issue and stuff like that. But hopefully they can make some strides.
Yeah. I know that they grow skin in, petri dishes and all that, but that doesn't recover the glands and the muscle, the dartos fascia and stuff like that. So I don't know. That doesn't mean that they won't be able to figure it out. More power to them.
Right.
And meanwhile, they're also speaking out to protect the next generation. So
yeah,
good for them.
Oh, I'm absolutely, my sister already knows my position. She agrees with me. Awesome. So I told her, if you ever have kids, and she's like, yeah, of course. Good. And she was resistant at first too, because when I had the discussion with my parents, she kind of overheard it, and she was telling me, the same thing. Oh, it doesn't affect anything. You have to stop thinking about it. You have to, same old crap. But I did sit down with her and we went through everything, and she goes, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So she's on my team.
Awesome.
And of course, any cousins and stuff I have, I'm definitely going to talk with them about that.
Yeah.
And hopefully any children that comes from my family will hopefully be intact, because it needs to start somewhere. We need at least one generation where this is, where you teach them this is the normal body. This is how men were meant to be. Just like women don't have anything cut off. And that's how it's supposed to be. As difficult as I'm sure it would be for some of the my cousins now to probably leave their children intact, it's going to need to be done, because we can't continue to spread the harm. We just can't.
That's good that she's supportive. That's great.
No, of course. My sister is my everything. She's always been, well, it took her a little bit to come to terms with this issue, but she's always had my back as we were growing up and everything. And so I'm sure I knew it wouldn't take too much to convince her, but I had to approach it in a special way.
Yeah.
Because she's more open-minded. My parents are way too old-fashioned.
There you
go.
So the next section is about sexual partners, and first to start off with the heterosexual aspect of this. Again, Mother Nature knows what she's doing.
Yep.
And so when you don't have that skin to go up and down, every time you go pull out, you're bringing the lubrication out with you, and it dries out.
Yep.
You go back in, dry it out again, dries out. And women, the vagina can only generate so much lubrication so fast.
Right. But we would have our own lubrication as well to contribute. That's something people don't think about.
Yeah, that and with the skin staying there, then it goes in and out without pulling everything out, right?
Mm-hmm. The foreskin would help keep it in.
Yeah. Yep. So
the prepuce would help keep it in.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like the word foreskin, right?
Of course. That's why I restated.
Yeah.
Because that's just a general term. They try to do that to separate those parts from the rest of the penis.
Yeah.
To try and make it seem like those parts aren't important.
Yeah. Even there was a doctor that went and talked to the bloodstained men at a protest and said, it's not part of the penis.
I saw that video. So my thing is, okay, show me the line that says penis ends here, extra starts here. If you look at it, it's one continuous, it continues. It's one organ.
Yeah.
It's not, none of it is extra. It all continues into itself. And doctors well, I hesitate to call them doctors. The butchers that do this,
Yes.
they're making a guesstimate because you don't know how big that organ is going to eventually turn out to be when it's done growing.
Yeah.
So they're making a guesstimate on how much to cut off. Not that you should be cutting any of it off.
Yeah.
But of course, they often get it wrong because who can get that? Who can look into the future and go, okay, it's going to be this big. Let me just start here and stop here.
Yeah.
Nobody does that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there's two parts of that word, fore and skin, right? So skin, well, that kind of diminishes what it is. Saying that's just skin, right? And as you and I know, is more than just skin. And fore, meaning, well, that would be the part that's just before the penis. If you consider it a separate part, the skin that's before the penis.
Right.
But, also minimizing it and also leaving people thinking that is separate, like a hangnail. All right, so yeah, those are heterosexual sides, and then there's anal sex, which could be heterosexual or gay, but
right.
With anal you don't have really any lubrication at all, so you definitely have to use lubrication. But supposedly intact guys don't have to.
No, because they produce their own.
Yeah, plus the rolling mechanism.
And right.
And then there's homosexual docking. You can't dock without something to dock with.
No, not if you're, you have to be intact for that.
Yeah, even Dr. Doe called it a docking thing for vagina, right? It's like a docking mechanism, a space dock,
So much ignorance.
Suck that out, and keep space out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, so those are all the physical aspects of all this and how it affects sexual relationships physically. And there's the psychological aspects of this. There's trauma from the cut itself, and people will argue, well, the baby isn't traumatized, or they'll forget it, or whatever. Right?
As if that makes it okay to do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's fine. So what else can you do to people that they forget it? If you're dealing with an elderly person, can you hit them because, they don't know what's going on anyway? No, you would argue no. But it's okay to hit an infant or traumatize an infant in that way and think that nothing's going to happen?
Yeah. And there's no study that shows that's not traumatizing. No study at all. So, and supposedly there were studies that have been done like with an MRI and things. It's like, do they even hook the babies up to a heart monitor or anything like that to see how fast the heart goes?
I would argue we don't need to do studies on that at all. The early years are the early years are the most important parts of a baby's life, where they start establishing things. Mm-hmm. How would introducing that to them immediately after birth, most of the time, how would you think that wouldn't cause any kind of lasting damage? I mean, it's just, I say it's just common sense. It should be common sense. Yeah. You don't need to introduce any kind of scientific study for that. It's just basic common sense. Another thing is,
I keep saying, reframe this. Let's just say that this cutting of genitalia was never invented up till today. And I say, no history of it. And some whack doctor comes along and say, hey, let's cut this off.
People be like, excuse me?
What?
What?
The burden of proof would be on him, not
to
us.
Prove. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then my thing is, why is the prepuce the only body part that needs to justify its existence?
Yeah.
Every other part of the body, we know it has a function.
Yeah.
The hands have a function. The feet have a function. Even the appendix, which people say has no function. That's not true. It actually supports a bit of immune health. Mind you, that function is minor, but even that part has a function, and we're not amputating it off of newborn babies.
Yeah. Yeah. I lost mine, but I was an adult. And now when I look back, it's like, I bet if they gave me antibiotics, I probably would have been fine. But oh well. Now I have a good scar on my stomach and all that. But
right. But then and it's ludicrous to think that one of the one of our basic imperatives is procreation. Do you think that Mother Nature would literally get the genitals wrong
Yeah.
on half of the human race? That
Well,
it makes no sense. It makes sense. How is it that only half of the human race is born with a body part so dangerous that you need to ablate it at the earliest opportune moment? That makes no sense to me. And if that really was the case, we wouldn't be here right now because we wouldn't have been able to survive.
Exactly.
You know, if we didn't need that part, evolution would have weeded it out long ago. We've been here long enough.
Yeah, but a lot of people say, well, you know, it's like I'm still a dad, right? Even though I'm missing that part, but yeah, when you look at it historically, there weren't medical reasons originally for it. It was
of course not.
It was always intended to slow down the sexual drive.
It was always intended to damage you, to slow down the sexual drive, to make you more spiritual. All this bullcrap that they say. It was never about health. They made it about health after they medicalized it, and so they needed to justify it.
Yeah, you know, to me, sex is a very spiritual thing.
I agree. So, I mean, even if you look at it from that lens, it's abhorrent.
Yeah.
You know, you're damaging someone for life. It's not pretty. It's not a pretty thing.
And then there's a trauma from discoveries, right? You and I both know this one very well.
Of course.
So, you know, I'd like to hear more about how your discovery process, that what kind of when it started, and you talked a little bit about it during your introduction, but is there anything more you'd like to say about that?
So let's see. Well, you know, I told you about it back in 2007, 2008. So I honestly, after I discovered it and what had been done, well, not only did I saw it as very insulting. You know, why would you think that I wouldn't be able to keep myself clean? Why would you think that part of me is disgusting from the outset?
Yeah.
How would you justify cutting up a baby? Mind you, I was born premature. I was born with I had suffered, suppose the story goes, I was born disabled because of lack of oxygen at birth. I wonder what else could have contributed to lack of oxygen.
Lack of blood.
Not that hard.
Yeah.
You know, I was a premature child. Supposedly, they didn't expect me to live past a week.
How old were you when they cut you? I mean, if you were born premature, did they wait?
I was, supposedly they did it a little bit after the fact because the hospital I was born at didn't do that. Oh. So they scheduled it somewhere else. So maybe a week, maybe a little more, but it was definitely early. And so after I discovered it, I honestly just put it in the back of my head. I don't think I was ready to face it at the time.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so, I kept going. It was only after I was 27, 2017, that it just all, I guess I was just holding it in. Or something happened. It just all came to the surface at once. And I just decided to come from my parents right there.
Yeah.
And after that, that's when everything started. You know, you're researching and looking and trying to find out and going into it and just learning more and more and feeling worse and worse. It's just like, okay. And then, shortly after that, I joined Twitter, not for that, but then I realized, okay, there's people speaking out about this. So, let me try to join the conversation. I have knowledge and the rest is history. So yeah, I've been speaking out since then. But yeah, it's just, I mean, to me, even if I was a woman and I had a son and they told me that I had to cut a part of him off, that would insult me. Are you telling me that I don't know how to make a baby?
No.
Are you telling me that I can make a baby just fine, but that part is undesirable? No, I'm sorry. No, unless the previous had gangrene, it was literally falling off or something. Yeah. No, it's a part of my baby's body. It stays where it is. Mm-hmm. It stays where it is. So to me, it honestly doesn't make sense. I don't know how, that parental instinct in me would be so strong.
Yeah.
it really is incredible how these butchers have trained people to just discard that. Because I think, of course, I'm not a parent, but when you have your baby in your hands and you're holding them in your hands and you think this is the most beautiful creature on the planet, I will never let anything harm you. Okay, let's drop him down and cut up his penis.
Yeah.
Where does that feeling go? That feeling of protection? You just throw it away? I don't think I could ever understand it. I run it through in my head a couple of times, trying to give my parents the benefit of the doubt, but I don't think I can see their perspective.
And they probably can't see yours either. I mean, obviously, your mom doesn't have, that part, and your dad never experienced not having his prep use. So that's,
It just,
I keep hoping that my dad will kind of realize his own harm too and start putting some of this together and maybe talk to me more about this. But I don't know, everyone has to come to terms with this in their own time. And my oldest was born in 2005, and it wasn't until the beginning of 2018 that I decided to speak out publicly. And it wasn't, it probably took me, it took me a lot of years to keep putting this together, because again, this information isn't just all in one place.
Right.
So, and I didn't just go with the information that I saw on a website. I always ask about motivations behind information, stuff like that too. Like, are these people making money off this or whatever? But which turned out, there's no money in it activism or advocacy for genital autonomy.
Nope.
There's, I guess, Intact America gives them good donations and stuff like that, but it's supposed to go to nonprofit work.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I asked a lot of intact men, just asked them tons of questions, and people go out to the to Facebook and look up intact male intactivists and see a lot of the questions I asked of intact men that are in that group. And if anyone comes up with another question to ask, pass it on to me, and I'll post it in that group. I'm the only person that's not intact in that group. Everyone else is, or at the very least restored. But yeah, for me, I went through when I look back, I went through the grief process as I kept picking up little bits, piece by piece. All of those things I listed about, how I'm affected with the hairy shaft and the testes and the pelvic floor and the meatal stenosis that I had. And I don't have skin bridges, but all these things and how I would have had lubrication and that rolling mechanism and all that, I didn't learn all at once. So every time I learned about it, it's like I kind of withdrew from studying it anymore. And I'm an introvert, so I think I process it internally. And I had to go through the grief process before I could come back out and look at it again.
So. Yeah, it was the same way with me. Every piece you learn is like a punch to the gut.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so it gets worse. Okay, so but then it also helps you put it together. Like I said, like a puzzle. Then everything just starts making more sense.
Yeah.
Your experiences and everything like that, and then you go, okay, well, I mean, assuming you're not, of course, denying it. You go, okay, I can see that here. I was affected like this. This is what's going on with me. Oh, okay, it's supposed to be like this. So
yeah. How nice would that be to have that one thing? And so it's not like we're missing just one thing. It's not like we're just missing our prep use. We're missing all the functions that would have come with it, and that's many things. So.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Several different parts.
And I think you probably know some men have committed suicide over this.
Right.
I'm still looking for a woman that committed suicide, but actually I just saw a thing on TikTok from Jessica Pinn's account. Some woman is actually in a medical or mental hospital right now because she was cut at the age of 13. Sounds pretty, some severe cutting happened to her, and she's really distraught over it, so, like suicidal level. So.
I can absolutely understand why. It's not easy, and you have to live it. You have to live with it every day to know. It's rough. So
and sex is an important part of most people's lives. So, and I've come across asexual people here and there, but it's like, okay, do you have your prep use? No. Maybe that has a contribution to why you're asexual.
No, for real. It definitely could play a part. I haven't looked at that myself because you know how loaded that is these days with identities and everything, and you don't want to ruffle the wrong feathers, unfortunately. So, but yeah, I absolutely believe that could absolutely play a factor. If you've got no feeling or reduced feeling, I guess you would say, well, what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And other than what goes on with your hormones and in your mind and stuff like that, sex is very much a psychological thing. I mean, your brain is your biggest sexual organ, really. So,
people say that, but you need to be able to feel something.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would imagine if you don't feel things, that would give you reason to avoid sexually charged situations. Right?
Yeah. There you go. I mean, it's not. I keep saying that it's not a hard concept.
No. And then there's a psychological effect on children in our society. I worry about my own children because they know that I do this stuff a lot. I think they know that I'm probably one of the loudest speakers on this lately. But I read the story about Greta Thunberg recently from her dad about how Greta went into a depressive state for a while until she started holding a sign out on the road, and that's what eventually led her to the UN. And that's where she came back alive and was all good and everything. That's great. So I don't want to shelter my kids too much because then they won't be prepared for the world when they become adults. So
of course.
So there's two sides to all of that when it comes to raising children.
Yeah, but you've given them the best start already.
Yeah,
so now you just have to build onto that. And I'm sure you have. Just let them know there's nothing wrong with their bodies. Their bodies are fine. And if anybody else says that, it's just coming from a place of the fact that they just don't know.
Yeah.
So
exactly, and I'll start to have some talks with them, but it's like whenever someone says something that might trigger you, keep in mind that they have their own issues. It probably is leading them to projecting or whatever on their side.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Brendan Marotta and Christina Marotta recently married and soon to have a baby. They were actually you look at Brendan Marotta's channel and they just recently had a talk about healing and stuff like that. And
yeah, I actually haven't watched that episode yet. That's the next one on the list for me.
Yeah, I watched it yesterday. It was good. Okay, and then there's medical professionals, and we have several of those in our movement that they're clearly psychologically bothered by this. They have troubles working with certain hospitals, or there's one doctor, I'm forgetting his name right now, that left the AAP over this issue. Then there's the parent side of this psychologically, particularly for regret parents. Now, again, I came really close to becoming a regret parent myself, and just the thought that I would have let that happen to my kid today just kills me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know if I would have been able to live with myself if I would have done that, or I'd be out in front of the hospital every single day protesting.
Right.
As it is. The OB that asked my wife that question, circumcision yes or no, he's already retired, but I want to pick on him.
So were you like pressured multiple times, or was it just a one and done
No,
question?
it was just that one thing because my wife ended up changing to a midwife.
Okay.
It was the midwife that gave her the information that she gave to me. It kind of led to this whole thing. So yeah.
Well,
we're thankful for changing to a midwife. That
I'm glad too. I'm glad
friendly.
too. Very good.
Intact individuals, they're impacted by this too. And even if they aren't cut, they're impacted. I often wonder. I'd like to go interview women that live in FGM cultures where 80, 90, 95% are cut, and how they feel about being different from the rest. Because I've talked to plenty of intact men, they said they spent most of their lives or much of their lives through a certain point feeling bad or having feeling like maybe they're missing out because they aren't cut or crazy things, right?
Right.
So,
and it's very sad that they have to be made to feel that way, but it's just a symptom of the wider culture that has just brainwashed people to the point they look at a normal penis and see it as abnormal. It is very crazy. Yeah. How do you look at a normal sex organ and go, oh God, no, you need to be normal. He is normal. They are normal.
Yeah. You just don't know what is normal because you have to. You need to go,
as sad
go
as it
to
is
Russia,
to say,
or Europe or South America, places where that is the norm.
Right, it is the norm. But then you mention it, and it doesn't cause them to think. It just causes them to ew even more.
Yeah, I don't get. It's cognitive dissonance. It's wow. Which
strong.
kind of leads me on to the next thing here is being advocates for genital autonomy. There's psychological effects to us,
of course,
and that's part of why Brendan did the interview with his wife about healing and all that, because we kind of have to heal ourselves from being advocates, because we keep running into these people that have this cognitive dissonance and trying to figure out ways to get them to open up their brain a little bit and take that red pill. It's
yeah,
in the process we get called names and or anti-Semites or whatever, which isn't true.
Not at all.
They're being defensive, right? And so for me, that any ad hominem attack on me doesn't affect me at this point. It's like, okay, next, here's more facts for you, and there, read that.
Eventually,
okay, read this, go watch this, or go watch that. I'll just keep on passing them information, and they can throw all their ad hominem attacks at me as they want.
Yeah, eventually you build skin thick enough that it's just like it just bounces off you.
Yeah, but honestly, I've been going through it lately. The other night I actually shed a tear.
I'm sorry.
Because I think what I'm coming to accept, you go through the grief process, acceptance is the last thing, right, is that there's only so much effect I can have on this.
Right, you're absolutely right.
It hurts every single day to know that tens of thousands of children are getting the genitals cut today, and there's not much I can do about it. I can just keep on trying to educate people by myself, and maybe hopefully get people to donate to causes, or to Blood Stained Men or Your Whole Baby, or whatever organization they think is a good one, and and hope that I've saved some. That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. If you even save one, you'll have done something.
Yeah, it's just not enough. It never is. It's not fast enough.
Never is, but we can only look to the future. Hopefully something will happen. Something causes the culture to shift, because it can't it can't keep going the way it is. We can't keep cutting up innocent children, whether it's male intersex, even girls. It's true FGM isn't really practiced with any kind of normalcy over here, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. I mean, look what happened to Jessica Pinn.
Yeah.
They weren't trying to cause damage. Who knows what happened there, but they caused damage and they hurt her. And that's not good. So it's another thing we need to keep in mind. But honestly, it would just, if there was just some way to make parents see, or people see that, yes, just because a child is a child, there's only, there's a line you can't cross. And genital cutting crosses that line 2, 3, 4, 5 times over. Just because they're your child doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. They still have to be kept safe. They still have rights. As much as you probably don't want to recognize what those rights are, you can't. This is not something that's acceptable. And people talk about, well, for medical reasons, you do know there are different, there are not just non-invasive ways to do it, but if you do have to go invasively, do a dorsal slit. You don't have to cut off the entire foreskin, just but of course people, doctors, butchers here, they don't know about that. The slightest problem with the foreskin and they immediately jump, just cut it off. No,
it's not of any value, so let's just chop it off.
It's like it's all they know. So there has to be a huge medical reform here. Because we can't just keep ignoring biology. We can't just keep ignoring these procedures that could be much less invasive. And we can't just keep ignoring the functions of the prepuce, because it is a legitimate body part. We're born with it for a reason, and we're meant to keep it.
That's why I wrote to 8 editors of a urology book saying, okay, guys, look at these studies, look at those studies, and fix your freaking book.
fix your crap. And they have more than one book to fix, believe you me. It's every biology book, every health textbook, every...
And that's... today, before this interview, I actually went to my son's middle school and said, hey, can you give me the sex ed material? Because one of the things I know is that during this parent teacher thing, they use the word uncircumcised. So,
of course.
So I'm like, let's fix that, because that creates a value, and that leads to bullying. And you guys don't want bullying, right? Hello. Has
to be intact. We don't call women that still have their breasts unmastectomized.
Exactly.
We say their breasts are intact.
You're not mastectomized yet? What's wrong with you?
That would sound ridiculous coming from anybody's mouth.
Get rid of that shit.
Apparently. But and another point I see brought up all the time, breast cancer is the number 1 killer of women. We could totally eliminate breast cancer if we cut off all breast buds at birth from our girls. But we do that?
We just do formula,
Heck no. Right? I mean, what use do the breasts have? They produce milk. We have formula now. We don't need that. Do you see how ridiculous?
I know,
it's ridiculous. So it's ignorance, a combination of people not wanting to face what we're doing. We think we're the greatest thing since sliced bread, but honestly, we're just as savage as the cultures that do this to girls and boys. We want to put ourselves on a pedestal, but no, we're not up there. Not at all.
Okay, so the next section is about relationships, starting off with child-parent trust. Sounds like you have a trust issue with your parents at this point, for sure.
That's an understatement.
I think that starts at the very beginning. Babies are supposed to be with their mom, skin to skin. You look at any other animal, pretty much, and they're like with their mom. They're being cared for by their mom, and from
the earliest moment,
whether it be minutes, hours, week, or 8 days, or up to a month later, or whatever, and the baby is taken away from mom and getting strapped down or getting needle shot in his penis and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crying, and no one's doing anything to help.
You watch those videos and you see these babies wailing in agony, and the people are just talking like nothing's going on.
Yeah.
They're completely dissociated. They're not even paying attention. You look at the looks on their faces, they're like robots.
Yeah.
That is when they're not laughing about it.
Yeah. So I gotta imagine that's breaking down trust right then and there.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You disrupt the mother-infant bond.
So
but of course, that was one of the reasons for this.
Yeah.
It's not talked about as often as other things. But when you do this to a man, when you break a man like this, you're gonna make him more malleable to suggestion.
I kind of wonder if it'd be interesting to monitor babies that went through this and didn't, and whether they're whether they cry or not, because it's kind of like boys are being taught not to cry right away.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Even at that early of an age, like, don't cry because you're not going to get any help.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, and even these days, I remember, even as an adult, they do it to you. This must have been 2 years ago. I had a breakdown at work because the day was just so crazy. Multiple people yelling, managers asking, come do this, come do. I'm only one person. I can only do so much. And I just had a breakdown. And I remember my manager took me aside and she was like, you have to man up. You have to pick yourself back up and go out there because blah, 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 this. And I understood why she was, you can't let anybody see you cry out there. Blah. I'm like, I understood why she was saying it. But part of me was also like, can you try to empathize a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm not, I wasn't bawling like a baby, but, it was rough. Yeah. And there was like no empathy whatsoever. It's like, get up, dry your tears, go to the bathroom. You have to get back out there because people are waiting for you. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you don't even have to cry as an adult, just not feeling safe that you can go ask for help. That's another form of crying. It's just, it's the adult form saying, hey, I can't handle this, or I need help doing this, or whatever.
Right.
And if we, it's already instilled in us early on that, we shouldn't expect help or shouldn't be asking for help.
Immediately. I mean, even as to how we refer to babies, what do we call girls? Oh, my little princess. What do we call boys? My little soldier, my little man. Mm-hmm. We don't call them my little prince. Yeah. Right. So that alone, that also tells you, how we see they're supposed to be tough, even as babies, apparently. It's a total lack of empathy for baby boys, and that's not how we should be doing things.
I agree.
That's not how we should be doing things.
Yeah. Yeah. You wonder why so many men commit suicide compared to women. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Toxic masculinity.
Everything that doesn't agree with the narrative is toxic masculinity, and even when men ask for help, they just put everything under that umbrella term, as if we don't have feelings, or as if we're not allowed to have feelings.
I kind of wonder if when people say that or whatever, they think that men need to fix themselves.
It's
not part of a system. Huh?
You hear that discussed though. I've heard many people say, "Well, men's problems are caused by men."
Yeah,
and it's just like not always.
Mom approved to have my penis cut.
Exactly, not always. But in terms of, and then building onto that, you hear about this concept of male privilege a lot. Do we really have privilege though? First we get our genitals cut. Then when we grow up, if we want to vote, we have to register for the selective service. I'm a disabled man. I'm registered for the selective service. And if I didn't do that, not only would you be persecuted, you're not allowed to vote.
Yeah.
So tell me what privilege that is. I'll wait. That's not really privilege.
Yeah, that's all.
And then
have you ever seen the Red Pill show yet?
Yes, I have seen the Red Pill. Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm very familiar with the issues and stuff like that. And then, as you grow up, not only do you see that girls are treated more favorably or more gently,
Yeah.
sometimes they're encouraged to hurt boys.
Yeah.
Without any remorse.
Yeah.
Like you hear, I remember as I was growing up, sometimes my sister would annoy me, and I'd retaliate because I'm like, just leave me alone. She knows she was annoying me, so she'd do things like pull my hair or do something, and I retaliate, and I hear mom tell, next time he does that, you do this. Okay. But then when I tell her, can you like tell her to stop doing that? Hey, she's a girl. She can't hurt you. Look how much stronger you are.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that's not.
Yeah, but you don't.
That's not.
But if you retaliate, you get in trouble. So
exactly.
Yeah.
And I did.
Lose
but
for you.
It's a lose-lose. So how do you expect men to? We're essentially when we let these things happen, we're telling men that they have no defense against anything. Yeah. You can't defend yourself. If you do, you're the bad guy.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah.
Not right.
I hear you. Okay, and there's a co-parenting side of this. We know there's some people that have gotten divorced over this issue. And even people inside the movement have gotten like really close to getting divorced over the issues, even though both.
Right.
Yeah. Luckily, it wasn't really a problem between my wife and I. I was open-minded, I guess, to learning. So, I don't know what's different about me, why I didn't react in a defensive way. It's like, well, there's nothing wrong with my penis. But right. I guess I'm just different in that way.
Perhaps I didn't react that way either, because to me, it, when everything started clicking, I mean, how could I deny this when it was right in front of me? It was like everything I was going through. Meatal stenosis. Oh, my urethra has thinned out. Oh, look, the picture shows exactly what it looks like. Oh, yeah. The painful scar. Oh, what a coincidence. The picture shows exactly, like, you can't deny it. It's right in front of you.
Yeah, it would be interesting to do a study on that.
Even if I wanted to deny it, I'd just be lying to myself. And I know that. Yeah. To me, it was just not even a question.
Yeah. And then there's the mother-child bond of this, which kind of goes along with the child-parent trust. So there's two aspects, right? There's the baby's being taken away from mom for this procedure for a period of time. So there's lack of bonding there. But when the baby comes back and it's not eating because it's in pain or passed out from the pain, or I gotta think that affects the bond too. My wife often blames the fact that I got to hold our oldest right after he was born for an hour or so. Skin contact with me instead of her, because she had to get a little fix done. That he's bonded to me more.
Bonded to you more.
Right away. I mean, it was quite clear from infancy that he was bonded to me. So, moms, or pregnant women, keep that baby close to you. Don't let them take them away.
You have to, and even dads, you still have to keep the baby close to you. So you did the great thing. Yeah. At least one of you has to protect that child. Ideally, it would be both of you. Yeah. But if the mom wants to cut the child, the dad has to step up. If the dad wants to cut the child, the mom has to step up. Yeah. Somebody has to do something.
Yeah.
Somebody has to do something.
Expectant dads, make sure you go to that hospital or wherever your wife is, laboring, and be there with her. Not just for her, but for your child too.
Yep, absolutely.
That child from those greedy butchers.
Absolutely, it has to be done. It's just,
Then there's pedophilia. I don't know if you've seen my video where I suggested a potential connection to pedophilia on this. I mean, there's clearly connections, but you know,
I've not seen your video, but yeah, you don't have to tell me twice. It's very, very obvious. I mean, some of the butchers themselves, I'm convinced, are actual pedophiles.
yeah,
They
a
have
lot
to
of
be
people,
getting some kind of a rush from this.
yeah, a lot of people think so. But you know, my thought is, you know, I've often heard this, like, okay, tighter pussies are better or whatever, and younger women have tighter pussies. So, well, yeah, there's pedophilia right there. But why would you want a tighter pussy? Why is that important? Well, when you think that there's not a whole lot of erogenous tissue there for the, you know, light touch, then what you have left is pressure.
Yep.
Right.
So the more pressure, the more they think they'll be able to feel.
Yeah.
So
you know, I could see how that would drive men to want younger women. So
it's all a sad state of affairs. You know, they don't put two and two together, and they just continue the cycle. It's not great.
Yeah. And then there's the doctor-patient relationship. I don't know about you, but I don't trust doctors much, especially if they're okay with this procedure.
No, I don't either. I question everything. You know, being disabled, you know, I'm in and out of doctor's offices all the time.
Yeah.
Especially growing up, I would have at least 2 to 3 surgeries a year just to fix various issues in my legs and everything like that. Because my CP is such that it affects my mobility. Thankfully, nothing else was much affected. You know, I can still, brain is fine, everything like that. It's just a mobility aspect. So I was always, you know, I'm always in and out, always prescribing stuff. But I eventually learned you have to question everything because they'll give you a medication. Oh, it's new on the market, and I'm supposed to be your guinea pig? I don't think so.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just.
I think that I've got to be devil's advocate here because I think this question will be coming up. Do you think that issue that you have would affect that other issue?
Anyway, probably. I don't know if it does now. Thankfully, I don't have any kind of erectile dysfunction yet. Of course, that's coming. I know it's coming because it happens to every man that's been cut. So, but I mean, I don't have any issues with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if it actually does for some people. Obviously, it didn't do me any favors. Like they say that I had a lack of oxygen at birth. I'm pretty sure screaming at the top of my lungs also contributed to that, you know, to that issue. But of course, since they didn't put 2 and 2 together, I mean, I don't understand how you can take a baby that was in the NICU and subject him to an even more torturous procedure and think nothing of it.
And we see it on Facebook and stuff often enough, where pictures and people posting about, oh, he's in the NICU, oh, he's getting his circumcision tomorrow. But it's like, what? How do you put a baby that's in the NICU through a procedure like that?
Yeah, so it's just it, you know, and they not only do they post pictures and they laugh like it's something funny.
Oh gosh.
Or they'll say, oh, you know, oh, he's going through it. It's so painful for me. Painful for you.
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah. Well, why is it painful for you?
I think you might be projecting a little bit.
Yeah. Why is it painful for you? Oh. And then the last relationship side of it, and we've talked about this a little bit, particularly about parents, but friends and family. If you know, when it comes to friends and family that are, you know, either cut themselves or have cut their child or whatever, you start talking about speaking out about this, and they have their own cognitive dissonance, and they have these beliefs that, you know, it's good or whatever. It's and they don't want to talk to you about it. Well, that creates a rift.
Yeah, well, I haven't directly spoken to other friends of. Well, I have spoken to one of my coworkers about it. She totally agrees with me. Oh. I also have not spoken to my cousins about it, kind of indirectly, because when I was going through it, when, you know, I first confronted my parents, there was a point where I didn't want to interact with anybody. I was massively withdrawn. And so I they kind of found out why, because my parents told them. And I know one of them came to talk to me on multiple occasions. You have to, go through. You need to understand their side. You need to recognize, they thought it was in your best interest. The usual stuff. But it wasn't like we were really talking about the issue. He was just telling me what I should be doing.
Yeah.
And even when I tried to, let him know about what actually goes on, he was kind of not really absorbing that information.
Yeah.
So it was just like, okay, well, obviously can't talk to him about it. But one of my friends that I actually met through him, that cousin, he was having his wife was pregnant at the time. So I gave him as much of information as I could. And at the end of the day, he actually stopped me. He was like, you need to let us make our choice now. I appreciate all the information, but you need to let us choose. I don't know what they ultimately ended up choosing, and I'm not going to ask.
Personal choice.
But right. But I sincerely hope that they didn't cut the boy. Hopefully not.
Usually if they respond like that, that means that they're going to.
And
if they don't tell you gleefully, oh, we're keeping him intact, then that means they're not.
Right. And when he told me to back off, I did. I was like, let me just, I've given him honestly all the information he could ever need. So I said, let me back off because I didn't want to lose the friendship. Yeah. But I said, it's honestly, it's on them now. Hopefully, I'm hoping the wife or even he was receptive. I gave him a ton of links, doctors opposing circumcision, Psychology Today, the Sorrells study, all this stuff. I even bought him. I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. What's her name? Dr. Carmack, Adrienne Carmack.
Adrienne Carmack. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she wrote a book. I forgot something. My rights as a birth mother. Forgot respecting my right, returning my rights. Something like that. She wrote a book. So I actually bought that book for him.
Interesting.
And gave it to him as a gift. And I said, it's a short book. You read it, then have your wife read it. I mean, she pretty much spells it out. So I'm hoping that might have lit a fire, but I don't know.
Well, you think about you and I'm 50. So, when you approach your parents about this, like, well, 30 years ago, there weren't books like this. I see a whole shelf and a half almost of books on the topic. So it's like there wasn't a whole lot of information for them. They just had what doctors were saying and what society was doing. So that's all that they had to go on. But today you have all this information. You have all the information on the internet. You have documentaries and videos galore. There's no excuse not to educate yourself about this topic.
No excuse.
So
no excuse at all.
In 20 years from now, when your child is complaining about this, you have nothing.
Have nothing. Absolutely nothing. It is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, so then the next big section that wraps up relationships. We're talking about FGM and IGM, and I am in no way aiming to diminish the harms of FGM.
Right.
Not at all. Right. I'm not trying to compete with it. I'm trying to show the connection with it because I think that ending male genital cutting will lead to ending female genital cutting. Because when you look at it objectively, female genital cutting only happens in cultures where male genital cutting is also happening.
Absolutely. There is no culture on this earth that they cut girls but they spare boys.
Yeah.
Not one.
And
but there are the inverse, however, is true. Plenty of cultures cut boys and spare girls. Our culture being one of them.
Yep.
So.
Yep. And when you listen to the excuses that they use in the female genital cutting cultures, they're the same.
They're the exact same. And the women that were cut in those cultures use the exact same excuses that men here use.
Exactly. Yeah.
They're the exact same.
Yeah. It's like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm better for it. Whatever. Just like males do.
Like men. So,
Exactly.
But because we have separated the issues and we go, oh, what they do, that's awful. We don't do that.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the background, cutting up babies.
So if you honestly and earnestly believe, honestly hate female genital mutilation, take a look at this carefully.
They're the same. We have analogous structures. People go, oh, well, women are completely different. Not exactly. Yes, we do have some structures that the other one doesn't have. But for example, our foreskin or our prepuce is equivalent to the female clitoral hood, which covers the clitoris.
Yeah, and in medical books, it actually says prepuce as well.
Prepuce. Mm-hmm. Yep. How interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like it's the same kind of tissue. And obviously, when you said we're not comparing, but men have more of that tissue than women do. Mm-hmm. So imagine you talk about, oh, well, it's FGM to remove that. Okay, but there's FGM procedures that sometimes don't even remove tissue.
Yep.
Or simply prick the tissue. Yep. Or stuff like that are much less or less worse than what we do to boys.
Yeah.
So, and yet we can't compare we absolutely can't compare the procedures. Absolutely.
Yeah. In both cases, you're cutting genitalia without a medical need and without consent.
Exactly. And that's what people should focus on, but they don't. Yeah. When they try to say that, oh, FGM always harms, but circumcision never does or rarely does.
Yeah. Or
it's just cultural bias.
Yeah. Whereas the female genital cutting cultures say exactly the same. It helps girls. It helps our girls. Keeps them pure. Keeps them clean. It reduces chances of STDs.
Same thing. Same thing that we do here. Same thing.
Yeah.
So we can't end one without ending the other. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
because that was part of the reason why the FGM law that we've had here since the late 1990s was ruled unconstitutional.
Yeah. And then the Congress beefed it up last December. But anyways, then the next section is about social productivity, and just the whole idea here is that if we weren't doing this for it now, for example, or if we didn't have the butchers spending their time cutting genitals without a medical need, what would we be doing instead? Would we have cancer solved by now? Would we have homelessness addressed by now?
I honestly doubt it. We'd probably have something else that was either just as bad or still bad, because unfortunately, with diseases like cancer and stuff like that, I'm absolutely sure they could find some kind of cure. But there's more money to be made over treating a disease over a lifetime than there is to just treat it and have it be gone. The medical industry is very profit driven. We know this. It's rather unregulated, and the reason I say that is because the simplest medicine can cost you an arm and a leg if you don't have any kind of insurance. So you can tell it's all for profit. So if we weren't doing this, we'd definitely be doing something else.
Maybe. I'd like to hope at least. That maybe someday this will be gone, and I'm so distracted by this issue that it definitely impedes my ability to be as productive as I used to be.
Absolutely. We don't want to do this, but somebody has to. Somebody has to.
Okay, then the very last but not least thing that I added here is just talking about forced retraction. And we already covered this again before, but just it's important to know the prepuce is adhered to the glands during early childhood. And there's I've seen different numbers about how soon it should disconnect.
There's no number. Everybody's different. Everybody it becomes retractable to different degrees at different ages. As long as the child can urinate, leave it alone.
And where's this should coming from? Why is it so important to retract? Why is it so important for that to become disconnected? Why?
I think it's just
really
another
concerned that it's going to be too tight.
I think it's just another coercion tactic, because we already established that tissue is very valuable to hospitals and skincare companies.
Yeah.
So they try to scare you by, well, if he can't retract to a certain point, oh, no, then we have to remove that because that could, I mean, people they spout such ridiculous nonsense like, oh, the foreskin was too tight. It could have turned the penis black. Something stupid like that.
Yeah.
It would squeeze, it was squeezing the head of the penis too much. Yeah. It's supposed to do that. It's supposed to be shut. Yeah. There's no, you can't diagnose phimosis in children.
Yeah, and even then, you don't have to remove the prepuce to address it. There's several other ways to do it, and most of those other ways, 97% of the time, fixes it.
Exactly.
That's another thing. That's another statistic you can go look up, really.
Of course, but the problem is that these butchers don't know and don't care to know the various options they could use, because at the end of the day, not only are they trying to get the tissue, but a lot of them are motivated by culture and their own status.
Yeah. Yep. Self-selection bias. Yeah.
So it's very sad. And as a doctor, you would think you want to avoid that, but the Hippocratic Oath honestly doesn't mean anything. It's just a formality. A lot of these butchers, they don't really care about their patients. It still amazes me that you can cause. Not only can you cause an infant any amount of pain you want and get off scot-free, but you can kill the infant, blame it on something else, and you get off scot-free. For what other situation can we do that?
Yeah.
I mean, and even now, I don't know if you've heard about the whole thing with the Johnson and Johnson vaccine. People were having blood clotting issues. There were a few cases, and just because of those few cases, they pulled the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you won't stop cutting up babies that die.
Yeah.
And you ignore it and continue.
Yeah, these have been a couple of recent tweets I've seen. It's like, okay, we've got a handful of bad things that happened here, so they pulled it from the market. But 100 some babies die each year from this procedure. But I
made one of those. Yeah, I made one of those. It was because it just highlights the blatant hypocrisy of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And not just with vaccines, even with toys and stuff like that get recalled.
Toys and cribs and
cars and stuff like
seats.
That. But
but
you can't see it fit to not assault a newborn baby. Okay, fair.
Yeah.
So,
battery of a minor.
Absolutely.
Battery of a minor.
Sexual battery, sexual assault. Yeah. It's just I don't know how people can rationalize this in their head. It's very scary. The power of brainwashing and culture is very scary. Yeah. Sometimes it makes you wonder how are some people able to see past it, and the majority they just don't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got to go on, Cristian. So unless you have anything else you want to say before we close up here.
Just one thing for anybody who is pregnant or expecting to be pregnant, or just even has any kind of interest about this issue, just leave them intact, please. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not scary. It's supposed to be the way it is. Everything is supposed to be kept on the body as it comes. It's very easy to keep clean. I know that's another scary. Oh, you won't be able to keep him clean. There's nothing to clean. Just clean the outside. When he becomes retractable, he's the only one that should be pulling his own foreskin or his own prepuce back.
Yep.
Nobody else should be doing that for him. You can teach him to clean. Boys are not dirtier than girls. Yeah. And everybody can be taught to clean. Yeah. There is no reason to do this. Don't trust anybody who tells you there is. Research it, look into it, and hopefully in another generation or a few more generations, this will be a thing of the past.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Cristian. I really appreciate you doing this interview with me.
My pleasure, John. You have a wonderful day. It was a pleasure to do this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you bet, man.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. Take care.